Hello, my dear students, and welcome again into our digital design class. So, in today's lesson, we will continue chapter 1. So, we will be discussing lesson 2, and we will be learning the roles of the different types of digital designers. So, before we jump into the first type of digital designer, let me just talk about the learning objectives or what are expected from you after finishing this lesson. First, you should be able to differentiate the various types of digital designers. Then after that, you should prepare a reflection paper reflecting on what track to pursue after this lesson. So we will be learning the different roles or job or responsibilities of the different types of digital designers. And then after this, you will prepare your reflection paper on what track, what type of digital designer would you want to be, okay, after learning what are the roles and responsibilities in the design world. Okay, so let's start with the first type of digital designer, the graphic designer or graphic designers. Graphic design refers to print as we have learned in our previous subject, digital arts track 1. Okay, so we've discussed graphic design there in detail, and we mentioned that graphic design refers to print because their deliverables is actually for printing purposes. Most of their deliverables for printing purposes siya. Graphic design is also a general term for many design practices, especially in the realm of branding. Okay, so before we proceed, let's discuss first what is branding for you to understand kung ano ba yung ginagawa ng mga graphic designers. Okay, let's start with this product. We all know that a product is what you sell, what we sell in the market. A brand, on the other hand, is the perceived image of the product. Okay, for example, let's illustrate brand using these water bottles. Okay, these water products. The product sold is water, but in order to convince people to purchase a particular water, companies develop different water brands. Okay, such as Evian, Perrier, Fiji, Voss, etc. Or Wilkins, ano pa yung mga sikat na water brand, okay? And each of these brands provide a different meaning to the product water. Like for example, Evian, ang kanilang brand is to make you feel young when you drink it. Ang Perrier, refreshing, bubbling, and sexy. Ang Fiji water, pure, healthy, and natural. So, may mga sarili silang brand. So, yun yung gusto nilang ma-perceive ng mga consumers pag bibili sila ng brand. Okay, so that is a brand. It is the perceived image of the product. Like yung example natin kanina, Evian will make you feel young when you drink it. Branding, on the other hand, is the strategy to create that image. Okay, so how will you create that image na when you drink that water, you will feel healthy and natural, you will feel refreshed, okay, you will feel young. Paano na-create yan? Or paano, ano yung gagawin nung designer para yun yung ma-perceive, yun yung perception ng mga consumers dun sa brand na yon. Okay? And that is strategy to create that perception is called branding. So, yun ang trabaho ngayon ng graphic designers. Okay? So, sila yung nagdi-design through the use of typography. Okay, so paano ba ginagawa ang branding? So, yun yung question. How can it be done? So, yung branding, ano yung gagawin? So, company tend to use different tools to create and shape a brand. For example, ang ginagawa nilang strategy, okay, branding can be achieved pwedeng through brand definition. So, ano ba yung purpose, values, and promise of that brand? Pwede ding brand identity. Ano yung magiging pangalan, yung catchy, eye-catchy na name ng brand na yon, tone of voice, visual identity, which includes their logo design, the color palette that will be used, and the typographies, yung typefaces. Kung titignan nyo yung brand na nasa screen natin ngayon, they use different colors or color palette. They use different typefaces. Okay? They have different logos. Yung iba gumamit ng wordmark logo. Yung iba gumamit ng symbol logo. Okay, lahat yan included sa magiging responsibility ng isang graphic designer. And sabi natin kanina, graphic design is for print. And we obviously know that yung mga label, product label ng mga brand na yan are to be printed and will be put on that bottle. Okay? So, pwede din, ang branding can also be achieved through advertising. Saan ba nila i-advertise? For example, sa internet ba, sa TV, sa radio, sa magazines, outdoor ads, website, mobile apps. Okay? So, yan yung branding. Okay? The strategy to create that image na this is healthier, this is more refreshing, okay? And it will be the job of the graphic designer to brainstorm kung paano niya palalabasin yung perception na yon para ganun yung maisip ng tao pag ginamit nila yung brand na yon. Okay? So that is branding. And that is graphic design. Okay? Graphic design is focus more on branding. Okay? Graphic designers, since nasabi natin kanina na brand identity will also focus or will focus on the visual identity design of an image, then we consider graphic designers or as visual communicators. Kasi sabi natin, paano nila bubuuin yung perception na yon para yung image nung product na yon, ganito yung maging perception ng tao, okay? So, kailangan ang isang graphic designer, visual communicator siya. Alam niyang interpret yung gusto ng company, for example, dun sa brand na yon, alam niyang i-interpret yun through visuals. Okay, ano yung mga gagamitin niyang images, ano magiging itsura ng logo, yung typefaces, for example, elegance, yung gusto mong palabasin, ano yung typefaces, elegant typefaces na bagay doon. Gusto mo playful siya for children, for example, ano yung colors na gagamitin mo. So, graphic designers will communicate to their consumers, okay, using this visual elements like typefaces, like colors. Okay, so yung na-discuss natin na elements, yung mga shapes, may kinalaman din yan. Okay, the thickness and thick or thin lines, may kinalaman din yan sa visual design. Okay? So, they create concepts. Graphic designer create concepts by hand or they can use specialized graphic design software. Tulad ng nakikita nyo sa screen ngayon, okay, pwede silang gumamit using pen and paper for them to visualize yung design nila or they can use a graphic design software such as CorelDRAW, Adobe Illustrator, Adobe InDesign, yung mga na-discuss natin in the previous subject, okay, to create concepts, okay, to visualize and to communicate. So they communicate ideas to inspire, to inform, or captivate consumers through both physical means printed, okay, designs, and virtual art forms, okay, like the one we see on websites or Facebook ads, okay? And these virtual art forms may be in the form of images, words, or graphics. So by constant communication with clients na nagpapagawa, for example, ng design or ng brand or ng customers, kasi they also need to undergo user research for them to know yung pulso, for example, ng mga gagamit. Okay, they also have communication with other designers to ensure that their designs accurately reflect the desired message and effectively express information. Okay? So, hindi lang sila yung involved, kung baga, siguro most of the jobs will be done, lalo na kung design jobs, will be done by the graphic designers. But they also need to have constant communications with the clients, with the customers. Clients will be the owner of the company, for examples. Customers will be the consumers who will be using that product. And other designers, which will be discussed later. Okay? To ensure that the design will really reflect yung gusto mong image that will be perceived by the customers, okay? And will effectively express the information that you want to communicate. Okay, so that is a graphic designer. Okay, so let's discuss further yung responsibilities of a graphic designer. Okay, so what does a graphic designer do? Okay, graphic designer combine art and technology to communicate ideas. So this is by using variety of design elements like ano yung design elements natin? We have shapes, lines, texture. Okay, so yung na-discuss natin, they use this, okay, they combine this variety of design elements to achieve artistic or decorative effects. Okay, and na-discuss natin yan sa previous subject natin. So, gumagamit sila ng mga elements of design and they combine this to achieve artistic or decorative effects. So, that's one of the responsibilities of a graphic designer. Next, they also develop the overall layout. So, what will or how will they arrange these elements doon sa screen or doon sa page. Okay? They develop this, the overall layout and the production design for advertisements, brochures, magazines, corporate reports, etc. Okay? So, paano nila ipla-plot kumbaga doon sa page or doon sa screen yung mga elements na yon. Saan pupunta itong call to action button, saan pupunta yung logo, saan pupwesto yung logo, saan pupwesto yung hero, kasi may tinatawag na ganun sa website, for example, saan po papwesto yung mga navigation menus, okay, they develop that layout. And this usually starts out by producing rough illustrations of design ideas. Okay, so this can be done by hand sketching. Sabi nga natin kanina, they can use paper and pencil to sketch or to illustrate their design ideas, or they can use a computer program like Corel or Illustrator. Graphic designers often collaborate on projects with other graphic designers, digital marketing specialists, multimedia animators sometimes, and even programmers, art directors, and web designers. Okay? When using text in layouts, they collaborate closely with copywriters. Siyempre, this is to ensure na yung design nila is really unique, original, hindi siya copied from someone's work or design work, okay? So they closely collaborate with copywriters who will write the wording kasi baka gamitin nila, for example, we find ways, for example, ginamit nila yon hindi na pala siya available na anong tawag dito, is slogan kasi ginagamit na siya ng video. So they need also to closely collaborate with copywriters to know or to ensure na yung wordings na gagamitin nila for the slogan is still available. And they also need to collaborate with copywriters to decide whether the words will be put into headlines, paragraphs, lists, or tables, kung may ganun man. Okay? So, as mentioned kanina, they create layouts, designs, and features. Kasali din dyan. And then, when it comes to digital design, a graphic designer can help with art direction, typography, color, and graphic assets such as icons or illustration. So, yung focus natin kanina ay nasa print. Okay, physical page siya mapiprint. Pero kung gagamitin naman yung deliverables ng mga graphic designers in digital platforms, in digital devices such as computer, tablets, or cell phones, graphic designer help with art direction. What typography or what typefaces will be used, what color will be used, color palette, what icons, the visual appearance of that icon, illustrations for borders, for example, ng website. Yan naman ang responsibilities ng graphic designer. Okay? So, I hope that is enough for you to understand what a graphic designer does or do. Okay? So that we can proceed to the next type of digital design. If you still have questions, you are free to enter or send your questions or queries via our GC. Okay, next type of digital designer, we have the web designers. But before we discuss what is a web designer, okay, what does a web designer do? Okay, let's tackle first web design. Web design refers to the design of websites. Okay, very literal. Okay? Websites that are displayed on the internet. So ginagamit ang mga websites can be viewed and is displayed on the internet. It usually refers to the user experience aspects of website development rather than software development. Okay, so yun ang web design. Web designers, on the other hand, since sabi natin ang web design are design that can be or design of websites that are displayed on the internet, ang web designers naman, ang job nila or ang ginagawa nila, they build websites, okay, or they redesign existing websites. Okay, web designers understand what it takes to make a website functional and easy to use, but also understand what is needed to make aesthetically appealing to the user. Actually, yun yung focus ng web designer. Please take note na magkaiba yung trabaho ng web designer at web developer. From the word design ng web designer, okay, they focus on the visual aspect. So, yung visual appearance. Okay, hindi sila yung nasa likod na front end sila kumbaga. Okay, yung nakikita natin sa screen na design. Yung back end na nagko-code, okay, trabaho na yun ng web developer. Okay? A web designer makes your website look good. They focus on the style and overall feel of the page using software like Photoshop to customize the website's visual elements. Okay, as mentioned earlier, they are more focused on the visual aspects and not yung functional na nagmo-move na siya from this, nagsisave na siya sa database. That is not actually the part of the job of a web designer. Web developer yung part na yon. Pero, some web designers also use code. Okay, they offer front-end development. They also use code like HTML and CSS or cascading style sheets to create their designs. Okay, pero hindi sila dun sa hard coding part. Okay, siguro gagamit lang sila ng HTML and CSS para lang they can move from one web page to another web page. Pag nag-click sila ng call to action button, anong mangyayari? Pero wala pang saving process, hindi pa siya nag-a-update na process. Kunwari, clinic ng user yung book ticket, hindi pa siya nagbo-book. Okay, nagmo-move lang siya to another landing page or web page, pero hindi pa siya nagsisave. Kumbaga, wala pang transaction na nangyayari. Okay, so that is a web designer. And let's take a look also on the responsibilities. So what does a web designer do? As mentioned earlier, a web designer or designer's main job is obviously to design web pages. Okay? Websites are composed of different web pages. So for example, pumunta ka sa pumunta ka sa isang website, yung na-open na umpisa, that is a web page. Pag clinic mo for example ang isang menu, for example, portfolio, and then may lumabas na another page, that is a web page. Clinic mo ang book event, may lumabas na isang page, that is a web page. Okay? Pag sinabi nating websites, collection yon ng web pages. Okay? And please be informed na ang isang website, there are various web pages. Okay. Mostly ganon. Okay? Kasi kung hindi ganon, landing page lang ang tawag doon. Hindi siya website. Okay? Kasi ang website, collection of web pages yan. So, a web designer's main job is obviously to design web pages. However, take note, there is a lot to consider in the design process. Web designers create the visual aspects of website. Ibig sabihin, they also need to meet with clients or online or in person in order to get a clear picture of the message that needs to be portrayed on the website. Hindi sila yung nagde-design lang on their own. Lahat naman ng types of digital designers, actually, they work with the clients very closely. They closely work with the consumers or customers or users of that design, okay, for them to provide an accurate solution to that problem. Kung may problem man na sinusolve, kaya sila nagde-design ng ganito. Okay? So, they meet with clients, online man yan or in person, to create a clear picture of the message. Once the details are determined, okay, they create layouts, designs, and features that display the client services in a way that is appealing to the target audience. Okay, so nga, kunwari, nakuha na nila yung input doon sa user or doon sa client. Alam na nila what will be included on the website, for example. Kapag alam na nila yon, yung details, they now create their layouts. Okay, pwedeng mag-umpisa din sila sa sketch, okay, or they can use computer program. Okay, they create their layouts, designs, and features that display the client's services in a way that is appealing to the target audience. Kaya nga visual aspects. Okay? Yung part na para makita yung visit for example sa website, eh hindi siya mahirapan mag-navigate dun sa screen. Okay, kailangan i-ensure nung web designer na user-friendly yung gagawin niyang design. Okay, nung website na yon. Appealing in a way na pag na-open nung user yung website na yon, hindi siya magli-leave agad. Okay, so ma-encourage siya to open more of the web pages of that website. Okay, kasi appealing nga siya. So they also deliver, web designers also deliver static mock-up files for clients to hand off to their developers. Pag sinabi nating static, okay, hindi pa to interactive. So wala pang interaction na nangyayari. Okay? So pag nag-click ako ng isang kunwari yung example natin kanina na get ticket, hindi ka pa nakakakuha ng virtual ticket. So, wala pang ganon. Static pa lang siya. Nakakapag-move ka from one page to another page, okay, pero wala pang transaction kung may transaction man yung website na. Transaction is, for example, magbo-book ka ng event, hindi ka pa nakakapag-book. Mag-order ka, kunwari Lazada na website yan or app yan, or shopping website siya, for example, hindi ka pa nakakapag-place ng order kasi static pa lang siya, wala pang interaction. Pero you can move from one web page to another web page. A mock-up, on the other hand, suggests what the final design will look like. Kung naalala nyo yung ginawa natin sa previous subject natin na corporate identity, wherein yung design nyo sa Adobe Illustrator, nilagay nyo sa design natin doon sa the face, ano na yon? Yon, the face place ba yon na yung logo natin, nilagay natin sa isang bottle ng lotion. Okay, so that is a mock-up for the customer. Okay, so ang purpose ng paggamit ng mock-up is para makita nung client mo or nung customer mo what the final design will look like once na na-print na siya, once na na-view na siya doon sa internet or sa website. Okay? And this is usually shared with clients, stakeholders, between a wireframe and a prototype. Okay, for you to understand, let's take a look at this. Okay, so the first image is an example of a wireframe. And wireframes are built and shared to communicate the structure. Take note of that. The structure and functional requirements of the design. Mock-ups, on the other hand, are essentially wireframes with an added surface layer that communicates the visual design. So kung titignan nyo yung wireframe dito sa left, okay, this is actually the structure. So I will put here the, kung website man to, I'll put here the logo, I'll put here the title of that website, I will put here a little paragraph about this website. I will put here my call to action button. Okay, so yung structure lang pag wireframe. Okay, and the functional requirements. Pag sinabi nating functional requirements, this is a call to action button and it is clickable. This is a navigation menu and it is clickable. Okay, this will be the logo for users to recognize kung kaninong product ito. Yun yung functional requirements. Mock-ups, halos kamukha din ng wireframe pero may surface layer na siya. Ibig sabihin, nalagyan na siya ng colors, ng images, and ng typography. Unlike prototype, a mock-up is static. Ibig sabihin ng static, uulitin ko lang, it doesn't include any interactions. Okay? Let's just put it this way para maintindihan nyo siya in the simplest explanation na pwede kong ibigay. Wireframe, sabi natin kanina, structure, yung skeletal structure and functional requirements, and it is static, wala pang interaction, no movement. Mock-up is also a wireframe, but with surface layer or with visual design. Okay, meron na siyang color, images, and typography, and is also static, wala pang interaction. And prototype is a mock-up kasi kamukha din naman ni mock-up but with interactions. Okay? So, dynamic na siya. Hindi na siya static kasi we can interact na. So, pag clinic ko yung plus dyan, meron nang mangyayari. Okay? So, we will be talking about more these three, okay, later as we go on sa topic natin. And before we proceed, those are now the responsibilities of a web designer. They design web pages, they create visual aspects of websites, they create layouts, designs, and features of that website, and they deliver static mock-up files. Next, we have the user experience designers or yung commonly called UX designer. But before we discuss what a user experience designer do or does, okay, let's discuss first what is a UX or user experience design. UX design is less about the look or the visual aspects and more about the feel of a digital product. Okay? They are more focused on the feel of a digital product. UX design is a discipline, okay, just like graphic design and web design. These are discipline. And UX design is a very analytical process. Ibig sabihin, they heavily base on research to find out how to design a product in a way that it solves the customer's problem. So, yun yung focus ng user experience design. Okay? They undergo analytical process. They base all their outputs on a research, user research especially, okay, for them to satisfy or solve the customer's problem. So let's just put it this way. User experience design is making something more enjoyable and usable between the product and the user who is using it. Okay? So, yun ang user experience design. Example. So, I know we are all using shopping apps like Lazada or Shopee. Okay? I believe lahat tayo. We are all IT. So, alam kong alam nyo yan. Kung hindi nyo man nagamit, alam kong, or hindi man kayo nag-place ng order, alam kong na-browse nyo na yan. Okay? So, we are all using the shopping apps. But somebody out there, okay, had to think hard so that it would be a better experience for us, okay, the user, to use that app. Okay? Somebody had to think hard para pag ginamit natin ang Lazada or Shopee, madali ang navigation. Madaling mag-place ng order. We can pay via cash on delivery or via bank transfer or via GCash. Okay? Somebody out there had to think hard para mangyari yung ganon sa shopping app na yon. It's easier for you to browse because you can select the categories, di ba? Pwedeng shoes lang kung shoes lang ang gusto mong i-shopping or ibilhin. Okay? You can easily check what products are on sale kasi meron silang part na ipipress mo lang hot sale, lalabas na yung mga sale on this particular day. Okay? And that somebody is actually the user experience designer. Okay, so yun yung trabaho nila. Sabi nga natin kanina, it's not about the feel, but about the look of a digital, it's not about the look, but about the feel of a digital product. A UX designer combines, ulitin ko lang, user research and standard usability principles or principles of design to create the framework for how a user will interact with that digital design. So they conduct research, they even interview these users for them to know or for them to provide the correct solution to their problems. In short, they need to understand the needs of the users or the consumers. Okay? For them to, and they use the principles of design for them to create the framework for how a user will interact with digital design. Their deliverables come in the forms of wireframes like web designer kanina. Pero ang web designer kasi they are more focused on websites and ang user experience on digital product. Okay? Their deliverables come in the forms of wireframes or prototypes that websites or app designers will base their layouts and aesthetic choices around. So, kumbaga wala yung user experience doon sa visual aspects, hindi sila masyadong focus doon. Okay? Because uh, they need to prepare these wireframes and prototypes lang na magiging basis nung web designer or nung app designer, magiging basis nila doon sa paggawa ng layout and visual design. Okay? Kaya kung nakikita nyo sa screen, ang ginagawa niya is more on wireframe. So, yung plano, kumbaga kung sa programming sana, yung flow chart na pagbebasean nung programmer. So, yung flow chart, ginagawa, for example, yan ng software designer, okay, or software engineer, and then yun yung ginagamit ng programmer ngayon para sa paggawa or pag-develop, pag-write ng code. Sa digital design naman, okay, ang user experience, ang ginagawa niya na flowchart is actually the wireframe or the prototype. Although gumagamit din sila ng computer programs for prototyping, kasi ang prototype, sabi natin kanina, meron na siyang surface, like mock-up, meron na siyang color, typography, meron na rin siyang typography, images na involved, okay, pero hindi nila masyadong trabaho hindi sila nagfo-focus kumbaga doon sa visual aspects. Okay? So, yung plano, yung magiging, ano yung mga ilalagay, pwede pa. Ano yung mga kailangan ilagay na features ng product para ma-solve nung problema ng user. For example, yung shopping app natin kanina. Okay? Ano ba yung pwede kong ilagay na isang feature dito sa shopping app na to para pag ginamit ng user, hindi na sila mahirapan mag-navigate. Okay? Kunwari, instead of instead na mag-i-slide mo pa doon sa kamay mo, or pag tinouch mo yung screen at mag-i-slide ka para makapili ka ng product, pwedeng naka-animate siya. For example, na nag-move na siya one product to another. Mga ganong style ba? Okay, so that is a job of a user experience designer. Okay, let's tackle about the responsibilities. What does a user experience designer do? Okay, so UX designers are responsible for creating a customer experience that is easy, intuitive, ibig sabihin ng intuitive, uh, accessible, easy to use, and they also consider uh, they also create customer experience that is easy, intuitive, and anticipates the customer's needs. Okay, UX designers are generally concerned with the total customer experience, including the ease of finding information within the product and accomplishing tasks quickly, easily, and especially enjoyably. Okay, so let's discuss the primary tasks of a UX designer. Isa-isahin natin. First, user research and product development. This is the first primary task of a user experience designer. A good first step for a UX designer is product and concept development, which includes researching existing users who will be using this product. Kunwari, gumawa ka ng uh, app, for example, that will deliver food for those people whose problem is hunger. Okay, okay, you need to do researching existing users and creating user personas based on this research. A UX designer may conduct user interviews or contextual research. Ibig sabihin, they observe users do an activity in their usual everyday environment. Kunwari, ang target users mo will be those who are going to offices or call center agents. Okay? You need to observe paano ba yung work or daily routine nila. Okay, bakit problema nila ang hunger in their workplace? Paano ba yung routine nila? Okay, you need to understand those for you to provide the correct solution for them by creating an app, for example, to deliver their products on time para hindi na sila magutom in their works. Okay? And paano gagawin or paano makakapag-order yung call center agent na yon without consuming too much time. Okay? Kaya kailangan i-consider din nung user experience designer yung ease of finding information or ease of finding food on that app. Okay? Within that product for them to accomplish their task quickly, easily, and enjoyably. Okay, so that's the first task of a user experience. They need to include researching existing users, okay, for them to base their product and concept development. Next, wireframes, prototypes, and mock-ups. So after UX designers have an initial idea of what the product should do, so alam na nila na itong app na to gagamitin ng mga call center agent, they open this app, okay, and lahat na ng, they can select per category, for example, pastas, burgers, kunwari may ganon, and what the customer experience should entail. So alam na din nila 'yon. Okay? So they move now onto wireframes, prototypes and mockups. Tulad ng sinabi ko kanina, they will now illustrate their plan, the framework or the structure of that app kasi naintindihan na nila eh. Parang programming din ito wherein you need to understand first the problem before you can provide a solution. Okay? So, after the user experience designer understands the problem, understand the needs of the user, they will now prepare the plan. Okay, plan the logic, parang ganun na, by preparing wireframes, prototypes, and mockups. So this is a wireframe. Is example of an app wireframe. Okay, pero this is a saving app, I think, na nire-record niya yung expenses mo daily or expenses of other persons daily, and yung savings mo din. Okay, so this is an example of a wireframe. So kung mapapansin nyo, hand-drawn siya. Okay, they use paper and pencil. And wireframes demonstrate where content goes and how the app or website functions is screen by screen. Pag clinic ko to, anong lalabas? Pag clinic ko to, anong lalabas? Pag clinic ko to, anong screen ang lalabas? Okay, so that is a wireframe. And wireframes are typically drawn by hand as mentioned earlier, or they can be designed on a computer in a grayscale with minimal color, text, and images. So the wireframe should be detailed enough to explain the purpose of the product. Parang yung nakikita nyo sa screen, and also present the specific layout to achieve that purpose. So nakalagay na din dyan kung saan pupwesto yung logo, saan pupwesto yung call to action button na sign in, saan pupwesto yung mga images ng different person, yung nakikita natin dito sa fourth. Okay? Saan pupwesto ang burger menu or icon, kung saan nila i-click yung kung saan kung i-click nila lalabas yung navigation menu. Okay, so they also present these layouts to achieve that purpose. UX designers make the most changes to the layout. Kung magiging UX designers kayo, don't expect na after understanding the needs of the user, gumawa na kayo ng wireframe ninyo and then tapos na. No. Please understand that you also do changes to the layout, to the structure and functionality of the product at the wireframe stage, depending on the comments of your clients or your user. At the end of the wireframe phase, some companies send the wireframes to developers, okay, to code the core structure of the app, while others move on to the prototype or mock-up. As mentioned earlier, hindi sila ang mga designers actually are not involved in the coding process. So may mga developers silang kasama. So parang pag nasa company ka sana, na design ang focus ng company na yon, designer ka lang talaga. Pero there are some kasi na iisang tao lang yung designer, siya na rin yung developer, siya na rin yung UX designer, siya na rin yung web developer. May mga ganun din for small companies. But for large companies, magkakaiba yung trabaho ng mga yan. May taga-plano, may taga-design, may taga-code. Okay? So that is one of the deliverables and responsibilities of a UX designer. The prototype is an interactive representation of how the product will operate. So yung nakikita nyo ngayon sa screen, Adobe XD, a product of Adobe, okay, can do this. Yung para you can move from one screen to another screen. Pag kunwari, yung ginagawa niya dito na nakikita ninyo, pag clinic daw niya yung Shop New Collection dito, okay, ayan, pinupunta na nyo. Pag clinic niya ito, lalabas daw yan, screen na yan. Okay, so pag in-slide niya left, ay pre-preview niya ngayon. So pag in-slide niya pa left, lalabas itong screen na to. This is an example of prototype. And sabi natin kanina sa prototype, prototype is an interactive representation of how the product will operate. Dynamic siya, hindi siya static. So we can interact. Okay, and we can do this, okay, sa mga susunod na meeting using Adobe XD. Okay, and I will try to demonstrate this to you kung paano gagawin yan para maging interactive yung mga designs natin using prototyping. The prototype is a functional version of the concept. Okay? Kanina static lang kasi drawing lang siya and sometimes drawing at hand pa siya. Okay? Prototype, on the other hand, is the functional version of your concept but without code or final user interface design. So this will let the user experience designer test out ideas quickly without expensive development costs. So a UX designer can use Adobe XD, okay, to test his or her ideas quickly without spending too much development cost. So wala pa siyang code. Nakikita lang natin dyan kung paano mag-function yung ginawa mong design by prototyping. So UX designers may present this prototype design to a client and do user testing with it. So pwede nilang ipagamit, okay? And during the testing, pwedeng mag-observe yung UX designer kung ilang hours ba siya ilang minutes ba bago niya mahanapan itong navigation menu na to, ilang minutes bago siya makapag-move dito sa screen na to. Kung minsan ino-observe nila yan. Kung matagal, they need to change or revise again their design. Okay? Many of the user interface decisions happen after the prototyping phase. Prototypes can be built with apps such as Sketch or Photoshop or yung sinabi ko kanina na Adobe XD to name just a few. A mock-up is a high-fidelity static representation of the product. So ito yung isa pang deliverables ng UX designer natin. The mock-up stage is where designers choose the colors, the typography, the images that will be used, etc. Okay? The mock-up takes time to develop, so UX designers typically don't get to this stage until they are sure about the features and flow of the app or website. Okay, so kaya nga nag-i-stop muna sila sa wireframe or sa prototype. And then once the wireframe or prototype is approved by the client and is also tested with the user and the result is okay, so they can proceed now to the mock-up. Okay, so yun yung usual na ginagawa nila. Hindi sila gumagawa ng mock-up hanggat hindi na-approve yung features ng app or ng website. And we can create mock-up using apps such as Sketch, Photoshop, and Adobe XD. Next primary task is usability testing. Usability testing means user testing. Okay? And user testing is an important part of the UX design process, wherein UX designers demo a prototype to prospective users so they can understand a user's pain points while using the product and they can suggest improvements. Okay? Kaya sabi natin kanina, pinakamahirap na trabaho talaga ng UX designer is to understand the needs of the user. Sometimes users won't notice or interact with a particular button or they can propose a new feature. Okay, so there are different types of usability testing. First, observation. Users are given. So parang ganito, paano ba ginagawa yung usability testing? For the UX designer, habang dinidemo nila, for example, yung prototype dun sa mga prospective users, they also do this different forms, okay, for them to understand the user's pain points while using the product for the users to suggest improvements. Okay, first, observation. Okay, they let the users the users are given access to that product while in the presence of the researcher who watches the user interact with the product. Okay, so example, researchers observe how long it take the user to find the order button. So, nire-record nila yan, ino-observe nila yan. Ipapagamit nila sa user yung product and they observe them, okay, syempre with their presence, they give access to the user and with their presence, they record, they watch the user interact with their product or with that app, for example, and record how long it took the user to find that button, for example, or that menu. Okay, that is first part, observation. Another form of usability testing is questionnaire, okay, wherein users are given access to the product and they are asked to provide open-ended feedback about their experience or answer a list of questions. Example, users answer questions such as, did you experience any bugs while using the app? Okay, and the user can provide open-ended feedback. Lahat ng gusto niyang ibigay na feedback. Okay, through a questionnaire naman yon. So, kailangan ipagamit ng user experience designer yung app or yung website or yung product and then they get feedback through questionnaire. And last form of usability testing, we have recording. Okay? Wherein users are given access to the product, the same dun sa dalawa. But recording, Users are given access to the product and their experience is recorded via screen recording software and shared with the team. So alam nyo naman na siguro kung paano gumamit ng screen recording software. Okay, they let the user access the product pero naka-record yung screen. So makikita din nila doon kung gaano katagal nahanap ni user yung order button. Makikita din nila doon kung gaano katagal naghanap si user ng ganitong menu or gaano katagal nag-move si user from one page to another. Okay? So after that, the researchers now examine the screen and pages that users spend the most time browsing. Okay? So that's the purpose of usability testing. Okay? The UX designers will use any of these three different forms for him or her to understand the user's pain points or the user's problem. Saan sila mas natatagalan or nahihirapan? Kung ganito, kunwari sa paghanap ng ganito nahihirapan sila, mag-place ng order nahihirapan, siguro pag ganun yung nangyari, natatagalin silang mag-place ng order kung shopping app man yan, then there is a need to revise. Okay? So, yun ang usability testing. Next, we have communication. Another task or another responsibility, another primary task of a user experience designer. They must also be good in communication. So, good communication skills are important for UX designer. They must explain a product to users in plain English. Then, translate customer feedback to the developers writing code, clients, digital marketers, and other stakeholders who don't understand the technical language of design. Okay, so pagpapagamit nila yung design nila sa user for user testing, they need to explain that in plain English. And then, from the feedback of the customer, kailangan na naman i-translate ni UX designer using technical terms para maintindihan ng developer or ng digital marketer or ng other stakeholders na hindi nakakaintindi ng, for example, ganito na words, okay? So, they need to use plain English. So, they must be good in communicating. For UX designers, the ability to communicate with individuals of differing technical expertise is very much crucial or essential. Okay, so if you want to become a user experience designer, make sure that you can speak or you can communicate well. Next, we have product improvements and feedbacks. This will be the last primary task of a user experience designer. Okay, so UX designers make adjustments to the product based on research and user feedback. So, kunwari natapos na yung usability testing, tapos na rin yung communication, okay, nag-conduct na sila ng interview, okay. So, yung next now is improvement na ng product. So, revision na based on feedback. So, these adjustments can include changing the layout of screens, okay? Kasi nahirapan din silang maghanap ng order button. Siguro nasa pinakababa, so kailangan pa nilang mag-scroll para lang makita yon, okay? Kung ganun yung issue, then you need to revise. Okay? Change the layout of screens. You can also change the order of information. You put the most important up and the least important below. Pwedeng ganon. You can add or remove features kasi hindi naman nila masyadong binabasa itong part na to. So, you can remove that. Okay? Or doon sa questionnaire, sinabi nila na nasaan ito. Okay, you can add that. And you can alter the interface. You can change the interface to make the customer experience more natural or more intuitive. Okay? So, yan na yung last primary task of a user experience designer. Okay? So, I believe na intindihan natin to sa haba ng discussion natin about user experience designer. Next up is the user interface designer. Did you ever wonder why certain websites evoke certain emotions? Or maybe you are curious about why some websites and apps are easier to navigate than others. You can thank user interface designers for that. Okay? But what is exactly user interface design? So this is again a discipline just like user experience design, web design, and graphic design. Okay, but what exactly is UI? And how does it impact how a person experiences a website? UI design is a discipline, as mentioned earlier, of designing user interface. Just like web design, it is a discipline of designing websites. Okay? User interface is the point of contact a person has with an app or with a website or with a software. So similar to graphic design and web design, a UI designer is a type of a visual designer. So hindi siya parang user experience kasi not on visual aspects ang user experience. But web designer and graphic designer, they are also in visual design. Okay? A UI designer is different from a web designer because they focus on designing interfaces for websites, apps, and other digital products, whereas web designers are focused solely on websites. So, yun yung difference niya. Okay? So, nagfo-focus lang ang web designer on designing websites, visual aspects. Ang user interface, general yan. They can do design interfaces for websites, for apps, or digital products. Similar to UX designers, UI designers create in a human-centered approach. Meaning, parang UX, they prioritize users' needs first. Okay? Ayun, so nabanggit ko yan kanina. A user designer's job is to ensure that the user interface is beautiful. Siyempre, yun na yung pinaka-layman's term natin pag in terms of visual design. And intuitive. Ibig sabihin ng intuitive, a person can navigate easily through it without having to think too much about what they are doing. That is intuitive. So, ease of use, user friendliness. Yun ang ini-ensure ng user interface designers. UI design also helps shape a customer's perception of a brand. So, parang branding. So, talagang very, very familiar siya sa trabaho ng graphic designer. Okay? Kasi they also focus on on branding. Okay? Yung perception of customers to that brand or to that product. Okay? So, that is UI design. Sulitin ko lang, ang difference niya sa web design, UI design is more general because they do or focus on websites, apps, and other digital products interfaces. Web designer focus only on websites. Okay? With regards to graphic design naman, user interface designers, ang similar nila, they also focus on branding. Okay? They also help shape a customer's perception of a brand. Okay? Ang difference lang siguro, more on digital ang user interface and print ang graphic design. With UX designers naman, ang similarity ng user interface and UX, they create in a human-centered approach. So they prioritize the needs of the users first. Okay? Ang difference nila, user interface is more on the look and user experience is more on the feel. Okay? So that is UI design. So what are the responsibilities of a user interface designer? What does a user or UI designer do? Okay? So now that you have a basic or you've got a basic understanding of what UI design, user interface design is, let's discuss what a UI designer actually does. A user interface designer is responsible for creating the look, as mentioned earlier, of a digital design. Digital design such as website, app, video game, digital product, etc. So they are tasked with designing a user interface from the user's point of view, yung gagamit. So it's all about how the user navigates from A to B via different visual touch points. Okay? So think of parang tapping a button or swiping through pictures or watching slideshows of pictures. Okay? So yun yung ginagawa or pinag-iisipan naman ng user interface designer. So they specialize in the design of the actual buttons to be used on a website or app or video game or digital product, text fields like where to put the name if you sign up, paano yung size nung text field, paano yung color, ano yung typeface dun sa text field na yon, and other interactive elements of a digital design, such as navigation menus, okay, will it be displayed at the top or will it be displayed as a flex bar at the side, okay, so those are the focus of user interface design. They design all the screens through which a user will move and to create the visual elements. And syempre, there are interactive properties that facilitates this movement. Okay? So, yun yung trabaho ng UI. So, plinano ng user experience using wireframes, prototypes, and mock-ups. And then, ininterpret ito ni UI through visual design. So, gumamit na siya ng visual elements. Okay, pinwesto niya, nilapag niya dun sa screen, paano yung magiging position ng mga to, anong color nito, anong size nito, anong typeface nito, anong image, gaano kalaki yung image. Okay, that is now the job of a user interface. Now, the question is, are UX and UI the same thing? Parang pareho, no? But not exactly. Pwede nating sabihin na they are cousins or siblings, magkapatid, but they are not exactly the same. Because user experience design is about the overall experience a user has with a digital or physical product. UX is more focused on the big picture, while UI focuses more on visual details. Think of UX as the feel and UI as the look. Okay, think of it this way. UI is what you use to interact with the product, while UX is concerned with how this overall interaction feels. Okay. What you use to interact with the product. For example, pwede bang tap of a button or swipe on the screen or scroll on the screen? That is UI. Pag sinabi naman natin UX, which is concerned on the overall interaction, okay, which is easier for the user no nagpa-user testing ka? Mas madali ba na mag-tap ng button to move from one part of the screen to another? Or swipe of the screen? Or scroll sa screen? Anong pinakamadali no nagpa-user testing ka? Okay? Kung ang pinakamadali na na-record mo, for example, is tap of a button, then yun ang magagamit. So, parang ganon. Yun yung difference ng dalawa. To clarify more the difference between these two, okay, take a look at this image. Think of UX or user experience as the experience of going on a road trip. Experience of going on a road trip. And UI as the stoplights, signages, street signs, lane markings, parang yung nakikita natin dito sa screen. So, these are lane markings. Okay. We have the coffee signage or pwesto, signage ng pwesto, coffee, coffee shop. Okay. The shape of the arrows, for example, or the color of the arrows, the color of the stoplights, okay? The appearance of the stoplights, signage, and lane markings each had to be designed like the UI of a website or app, okay? But how they all affect your driving experience defines the overall user experience. Okay, ganito siya. maglalagay ka ng example ng text sa website mo that will explain what that website is. Okay? Kung ilalagay mo ba yon, mas magiging okay ba yung stay nung user? Mas maiintindahan ba niya yung purpose ng website na yon pag nilagay mo yung element na yun sa design mo? If the answer is yes, ilalagay mo. If the answer is no, huwag mong ilagay. So, yung part na yon is UX. So, user experience. Okay? Ngayon, sa user experience naman, how will you format that paragraph, for example, para mas readable siya? Kasi importante, sabi sa UX, importante na mailagay siya for user to understand the purpose. Ngayon naman, paano yung gagawin ng user interface design para mas maging visible, mas ma-emphasize yung element na yon kasi importante nga siya. Okay, pwedeng lakihan mo ng font size or mas maganda yung typeface na nagamit or mas readable yung typeface na nagamit. Yung position niya or yung location niya sa screen ay mas accessible. So, pag open pa lang ng website, nakita na nila. Okay, that is now the job of the user interface designer. Okay? So I hope you understood the difference of UX and UI. Next, we have the app designer. App designer specializes in the visual design of mobile apps. Okay? So wala sila sa Windows based. So mobile apps. So mobile, you have your tablets or cell phones, not desktop or laptops. Okay, yun naman ang focus ng app designers. And they usually work closely with UX designer. Or there are some app designers na sila na din yung UX designer. Kaya nga sabi ko sa inyo kanina, pwedeng isang tao lang lahat itong various types of designers or pwedeng madami sila. App designers will also deliver offline mock-ups which are discussed already kanina, kung ano yung mga offline mock-ups na yan. Offline, ibig sabihin, is static. Okay? And the developer will be needed to make the app functional. Kasi designer nga lang tayo. Okay, so we do not do coding. Some designers are also developers, but mostly they focus only on designs. So what does an app designer do? App designers work with clients to identify the specifications of the app. So, in this way, they can get a rough idea bakit kailangan nilang, ba't kailangan yung mga app designers, they also work with clients, okay? Okay, for them to get a rough idea of how individual screen will look, syempre, sino ang gagamit? Sino ba ang may-ari nung app na yon. So it will be your clients. So you need also to get their idea kung ano bang magiging itsura ng screen mo. What are all the elements existing on individual screen? What to include in this first screen? What to include pag clinic ko to, second screen will be displayed, anong i-include na element dyan. Okay, what input will be expected from the users? Will we get their complete name, their birth date? Kailangan ba yung age nila? Ganito dapat para magamit tong app na to kasi we need also to limit the users. Lalo na, for example, if that app is purposely for adults, then you need to ask for the ages. So, input yon. They need to input. Okay? How that input will be processed. So, will they need to enter their birth date and then i-convert na sa age or diretso ng age? Okay? How the elements will behave when the users interact with them. Okay, pag clinic ko ba to, mag-a-animate siya, mag-move sa next slide. Okay, so yun yung mga kailangan natin na ideas. Kailangan ng app designers na ideas. That's why they need to work with clients to identify the specifications of the app. And the specifications are mentioned are how the individual screen will look, what are the elements on these screens, what input will be expected from the users, how that input will be processed, how the elements will behave when the users interact with them. Okay? So yun yung job, responsibility of an app designer. Another, App designers create programs for smartphones, tablets, and computers. So, understood yan. Okay, an app designer may create games, weather apps, social networking tools, maps and navigation programs, and much more. So, it's therefore important that they know how to use professional design software and test these apps in different platforms. So, pag sinabi natin test these apps in different platforms, kailangan nagra-run yan sa iba kasi yung concept pag gagamitin mo siya for Android phone, iba din yung concept pag gagamitin mo siya for iOS, for Apple products. They are also responsible in writing documentation such as techno guides, okay, or user's manual for the users to know how to use the app. Okay, parang kwan din, meron silang help button kumbaga and they need to write what will be included on that help button or user's manual to inform users on how to use that app. Okay, so kailangan din yan. So after deployment of the app, kunwari na ibigay na nila yan sa client and pinapagamit na sa user, okay, they are still responsible, the app designers are still responsible of updating. Kaya nga kung napapansin nyo sa mga Android phones ninyo, halos monthly may updates yung product, 'di ba? Yung app may monthly update, may dinadagdag sila kasi hinahanap kunwari sa reviews nung app na yon, parang may mga comments or suggestions yung mga gumagamit. Sana may ganito, bakit ganito naglalag. Then you need to update, repair, and modify these existing apps as required by the consumers or as required by the users. Okay, so that is the job of an app designer. Next, we have the product designers. Product designers are closely related to UX designers. For some companies nga, the terms can be interchangeable. So, pwedeng yung product designer, siya din yung UX designer. Okay? But product designer make decisions about how a digital design product should work and what services it should offer. So, ang focus nila is on the product. Okay? Not actually parang sa UX na ang focus is on the user. Okay? So, product designers will make decision how this product should work at ano yung mga features na kailangan mong i-feature doon sa product na yon. A product designer is at its core is a problem solver. Okay. Product designers are somebody that works on building apps, designing apps. Usually when people think about apps, they think about mobile phone apps, which is true. This is a product designer's job to do mobile apps, but it's also a lot of the apps that we're working on our desktop. And I would also say product design, whether it is software like Photoshop. So parang yung app designer kanina, they are more focused on mobile phone apps. Pag product designers naman, hindi lang mobile apps ang focus nila, but also on desktop apps like Photoshop, or pwedeng software siya like Gmail or any other apps that you're using when you're browsing like Google Docs, Google Forms, Dropbox, Facebook. Those also are apps, and the people that work on that app or on those apps are called product designers. Okay, so let's take a look at the responsibilities of a product designer. What does a product designer do? A day in a life of product designers would be working on ideas and trying to understand the users. Okay? They recognize the business needs. So it needs to balance. It's not all about the customers, but they also need to innovate within the intersection of what the business requires and its customers. Okay? Kailangan din nilang i-consider not all about customers, but they also need to recognize the needs of the business. Okay? They can translate requirements of the business or of the customer into a design, whether that's user experience or visual. So parang pinagsamang UI and UX ito. Product designers should also be skilled at user research and validation for them to gather feedback and describe what the next action should be. So parang UX din. Ba? So they do user research And then based from the feedbacks of the users, they do validation. Okay? Para may basis sila kung ano yung next action na gagawin nila. So if we look at these things, product designers are really problem solvers who understands, as mentioned earlier, who understands UX and UI. They also create wireframes and prototypes just like UX designers does or do. Okay, so yun ang product designer. So they are more focused on apps for digital products such as Dropbox, okay, HostGator, yung mga nakikita natin sa internet na products na ina-advertise nila. Okay, those are examples of product designer deliverables. We have also interaction designers, but before we discuss interaction designer, what is interaction design? Interaction design is the design of the interaction between users and products. So most often, when people talk about interaction design, the products tend to be software products like apps or websites. Okay, so nakikita nyo ngayon sa screen, that is an example of an app. And app or interaction design include the way. Naka-bold or naka-caps lock yung way natin kasi yun yung gusto kong i-highlight sa interaction design. The way users will interact. Okay? So, how the users feel about the product is user experience. How the users how the users will interact is interaction design. An interaction designer designs each moment-to-moment interaction a user experiences with a digital design. So let's just put it this way. So whenever a user clicks on something on the screen or scroll down a page, 'di ba? We receive some form of visual feedback. Usually a short animation, parang yung nakikita natin ngayon sa screen. That is an interaction designer deliverables. Okay, so yun yung ginagawa niya. Meron tayong prines na button, may visual feedback, parang yan, may prines siya, kunwari prines niya yung, or tinap niya yung picture ng burger, lumaki yung picture ng burger, nag-maximize siya, tinap niya ang plus, nag-a-add siya ng quantity, so hindi siya nagsa-swipe, nagta-touch siya, and then merong visual feedback. May interaction between the user and the app. That is actually the job of the interaction designer. Interaction design is the creation, para mas maintindihan nyo pa, creation of a dialogue between a person and a product, system, or service. Let's just put it this way. Kung paano mag-usap yung app tsaka yung user. Okay, gusto ko tong burger na to. Magkano? Tinap niya sa screen yung picture na maliit or yung thumbnail ng burger. Lumaki yung picture ng burger. Nag-add siya ng quantity. Nag-add na din yung cost dito. So, kung mapapansin nyo, tinap niya yung burger, lumaki. Nag-add siya ng quantity ng burger. Nag-add siya ng quantity, nagdadagdagan din yung price. Okay? So, para nag-uusap lang sila pero hindi verbally, but by touching the screen and the app is responding. Okay? So, that is the job of interaction designer. So, these are the responsibilities of an interaction designer, and it involves 5 dimensions. So, a designer's or interaction designer's work involves 5 dimensions. First, we have the first dimension, words. Especially those used in interactions like button labels, okay? Yung mga nilalagay natin sa mga call to action buttons natin na order, place order, book events, get tickets, sign up now, okay? Those are button labels and these are words. And interaction designers ensures that these words or labels are meaningful and simple to understand. So this button should communicate information to users, but not too much information because this will overwhelm the user. Kaya kung napapansin nyo yung mga buttons na nakikita nyo sa mga websites, sa mga apps ninyo, di ba? Isang word lang, 1 to 2 words lang, sign up. Yun na yung pinakamahaba na nakita ko na words. Get ticket, book events, okay, sign in, log in. Okay, so simple, very simple, but meaningful. Simple to understand but meaningful. And they communicate the information to the user. Next, we have visual representation. This concerns graphical elements. So, yung mga images to be used, typography, kung anong typefaces, font choice, icons that users interact with. So, this usually supplement the words that used to communicate information to the user. Okay? So, sometimes, instead of the word like, ang nilalagay natin thumbs up, instead of the word edit, ang nilalagay natin parang pen, di ba? So, these are visual representations and this should be selected, okay, carefully. Kasi once na gumamit ka ng icon na hindi naman related doon sa purpose niya, okay, mali na. So, hindi na siya after the principles of design. Okay, so trabaho din yan ng interaction designer. Choice of words, choice of visual representations. Next, physical objects or space. Through what physical objects do users interact with the product? Okay, ito ba ay gagamitin sa laptop with a mouse or touchpad? Siyempre, kung gagamit ka ng app, you don't only consider those users na may external na mouse. You also need to consider those users na walang mouse at gumagamit lang ng touchpad. Or baka wala silang computer, smartphone lang yung ginagamit nila and they only use fingers to order, for example. And within what kind of physical space does the user do so? For instance, is the user standing in a crowded train while using the app on a smartphone, or is she sitting on a desk in the office surfing the website? So these all affect the interaction between the user and the product, and the interaction designer should all consider this. Okay? Tulad ng sinabi ko nga kanina, gumawa ka ng app, pero ang pwede lang gumamit yung may mga external mouse. Pag touchpad lang yung gamit mo or pag cellphone lang, hindi na usable yung app na yon. O di, wala. Hindi siya magagamit ng madami. Okay? Ang pwede lang gumamit yung may mga external mouse lang. Okay? So, yun yung mga kailangan i-consider ng isang interaction designer. Physical objects or space means they need to consider the devices or how the user will use it, okay? Yung screen, mag-a-adjust ba siya automatically? Pag nilipat sa cellphone yung app, mag-a-adjust siya automatically. Pag nilipat sa tablet or sa laptop, yun yung physical objects and space. And next, we have time. While this dimension sounds a little abstract, it mostly refers to media that changes with time, like animation, videos, and sounds. So motion and sounds play a crucial role in giving visual and audio feedback to users' interaction. Also of concern is the amount of time a user spends interacting with the product. So can users track their progress or resume their interaction sometime later? So kailangan din ito, yung time. Kaya kung minsan importante din na yung mga important elements of your design, visible lang siya sa screen. Hindi mo na dapat hinahayaan yung user mo to find where that button is, where that navigation menu is. And also, yung animation mo, dapat hindi masyadong matagal. Yung pag nag-swipe siya, respond agad. Dapat yung app mo. Hindi yung naghihintay sila ng sobrang tagal bago mag-load yung images. So, kailangan i-consider din yung mga yan. So, that is time. Okay, so media. Animation, videos, and sounds. Pati yung sounds mo, baka naman pag may prines siyang button, ang haba ng sound bago mag-move sa next. Okay, you also consider that. And last is the behavior. So this includes the mechanism of a product, just how the users perform actions on the website. So how do users perform actions on the website? How do users operate the product? In other words, it's how the previous dimension. Okay, define the interactions of a product. It also includes the reactions. For instance, emotional responses or feedback of users and the product. Okay, so yun naman ang behavior. Okay, emotional responses or feedback. So that is, or those are the responsibilities of an interaction designer. So for you to visually see what are these 5 dimensions, let's take a look at this. Okay, so we have the text or the words. It is an example of visual representation. The word place in an icon, laptop, physical object. Click niya, lumabas yan. Yan yung time. And that's the behavior. Ano yung emotional response. Kunwari, may clinic siyang tama sa screen. Gumawa ka ng app, quiz app, for example. Prines niya to, may lumabas na check, that is behavior. Ano yung response niya? Or, nag-rate ka, for example, 5, nag-rate ka ng 5 stars, ano naman yung response ng app? Nag-review ka, nag-write ka ng review, and then, sinave mo or in-update mo, ano ba yung prinipress natin pag nagre-review? Okay, ano yung response ng app? Yun naman yung behavior. Okay, so yan yung 5 dimensions of interaction design. This should be considered by the interaction designer. Okay, so in addition, how do interaction designers work with the 5 dimensions to create a meaningful interactions? To get an understanding of that, we can look at some important questions interaction designers ask when designing for users. So this is provided, by the way, by usability.gov. Okay. First, what can a user do with their mouse, finger, or stylus to directly interact with the interface? Okay, so that is yung sinasabi natin kanina na kailangan i-consider ng interaction designer. So, ito yung mga questions nila. What can a user do with their mouse? Pwede din ba ang finger or stylus sa mga may light pen to directly interact with the interface? So, this will help us define the possible user interactions with the product. Okay? So, if this app is purposely for Android phones, then dapat pwede ang finger, touch, and stylus kasi may mga mobile phone na merong light pen or stylus. If this app is purposely for laptop, then we can use external mouse or trackpad. So, yun yung mga kailangan i-consider. What about the appearance? Yung color niya, yung shape niya, yung size niya, okay? What about the appearance? Will it give the user a clue about how it may function? Okay, so this helps us give users clues about what behaviors are possible. Okay. Do error messages provide a way for the user to correct the problem or explain why the error occurred? We also include this to for us to anticipate and mitigate errors. Okay? So pag kunwari may prena sila tas biglang loading error pag may sinabing ganon. Okay? May way ba para makorek yung mga yon or may mag-explain kung bakit nag-error ng ganon. Kunwari, place hindi na na-send yung order mo kung shopping app man yan. Meron bang doon sa app mo, meron bang explanation kung bakit nangyari yon? What feedback does a user get once an action is performed? Kunwari yung parang kanina na nag-order siya and then nag-add siya ng quantity kung ilang pirasong burger and then nag-a-add yung price dun sa taas. Okay, that is an example of a feedback. Okay. So what feedback does a user get once an action is performed? Ang action is nag-add siya ng quantity. So ano naman yung feedback? So, yon, kailangan i-consider yon. Kasi baka naman pag nag-add ka ng quantity, wala namang nangyayari sa screen. Hindi ka nai-inform kung ano yung ginagawa mong action. Okay? Pag clinic mo, for example, ang place order, anong feedback? Pumupunta ka dun sa checkout page. Parang ganon. Next, are the interface elements a reasonable size to interact with? Okay? Questions like this helps us think strategically about each element used in the product. Okay, parang yung sinasabi ko kanina na this paragraph will let you explain the purpose of that website. Pero yung paragraph mo sobrang liliit, hindi naman nababasa o kaya walang contrast in terms of background color and foreground color. Okay, so kailangan i-consider 'yan. And lastly, are familiar or standard formats used. Okay, so standard elements and formats are used to simplify and enhance the learnability of a product. You consider here the uh, wordings that you will be using. Kaya kinonsider natin yung word kanina, dapat easy to understand and meaningful. Okay? So, mga standard formats like ang mga navigation menus, hindi natin nilalagay dito sa baba, kundi nilalagay sa taas or sa side. Ang header, kaya ang header dapat nasa taas. Okay, ang call to action button dapat accessible. Ang hero dapat na emphasize dun sa screen. Okay, so those are important questions interaction designers ask in the preparation of their design. And lastly, we have the animators. An animator produces multiple images called frames. So, na-discuss natin ito, I think, na-discuss ito sa multimedia systems ninyo, wherein they use different images, okay, and they place these images in a timeline into different frames, and when they play the animation using the timeline, they create illusion of movement. Okay, when you place multiple images on frames and they will be played sequentially, they will create an illusion of movement. At yun ang trabaho ng animators. In contrast to an interaction designer, okay, these animations are often more robust. Kasi nag-animation or meron din animation part ang interaction designer, 'di ba? Sabi natin kanina sa behavior, pag clinic ko to, ano yung animation na mangyayari? Okay? Pero mas hardcore kumbaga ang mga animators because they need to for example, they need to make hand-drawn animated scene that plays in a website header or sa mga sidebars natin, yung nakikita nyo sa screen. Sometimes they also do animated version of the logo, parang yung nandito sa screen natin. Or yung umiikot na logo. Or yung ganitong logo. Okay, they also do that. Yan yung mga ginagawa ng animators. They also use parang yung naglo-load na screen. Okay, animation din yung mga yon. But what does an animator do? Ano pa yung mga ginagawa niya? Animators create special effects, okay, and other animations for everything from advertisement to video game. Some animators also choose to develop specialties such as hand drawing, designing 3D characters, or creating computer-generated images, mga 3D models natin. So, animators use many techniques and tools to accomplish these special effects. So, they tend to work in 2D environment, 3D environment, okay? Model making, stop frame, computer-generated animation like stop motion, motion graphics. Okay, so yan yung mga ginagawa ng mga animators natin. Animators can also be involved in the big picture development of their projects. So in a video game or movie, for example, na nilalagay sa mga website, 'di ba may mga kung minsan may mga short clips na nilalagay media doon sa website. So, jobs will include sometimes storyboarding to create a plot and to develop characters kung 3D man yan. For an advertising campaign, it might mean acting as a project manager to keep everything on schedule and within budget. So, those are the responsibilities of an animator. Okay? So, pwedeng separate ito, pwedeng siya na rin si interaction designer. Okay? So, yun ang animator. Okay? So, those are the various types of digital designers, and I hope you understood their job descriptions, their responsibilities, the scope of their job, and you also understood that sometimes these types of designers, pwedeng nasa iisang tao lang yan for small companies or pwedeng each person in a large company have their own or has their own job. So isang interaction designer, isang animator, isang UX designer, okay? So those are the types, okay? And I hope you already understood the jobs, the responsibilities, and the scope of their job. And if you still have questions for you to better prepare your reflection paper, so reminding you of your reflection paper, please use our GC to ask your questions, or you can do your own research for you to study further about the responsibilities. Okay, so I will be expecting for your reflection paper discussing or reflecting on what track or what type of digital designer would you want to be in the future based on the responsibilities and scope of job. Okay, and please encode that using Microsoft Word or any software. O Microsoft Word is the best. Okay, and I will just send you via GC kung ano yung formatting natin. Okay, so that would be all for Chapter 1, Lesson 2, Types of Digital Designers. Thank you all, my dear students, for patiently waiting for this video lesson and for watching and listening. If you still have further questions, please feel free to send me a message using any of the following contact details. See you at the next video lesson. Good day.